Hello and welcome back. Happy Thursday. Today we are getting a new dev diary. They are back from summer vacay, and so we should be getting dev diaries every week now for Victoria 3, and we're going to run through this one, which is talking about one of the updates for patch 1.5, which is going to be the inclusion of companies here. And so this is a very interesting thing. They didn't really talk about this that much in other dev diaries, so it's a bit exciting to see this sort of thing kind of coming in. Now, my initial impression, just kind of overall, is that they are introducing something, but they are being very tentative with the type of bonuses that companies are giving, perhaps not wanting to have a situation where an enormous advantage is given. So let's jump in and let's talk about it. There's also one thing in there that gives a little bit of a hint in regards to local good prices about something that is not necessarily what I expected and kind of the way of mechanic I was not hoping for, but we'll get into it when we get to it. Okay, so hello and welcome back to the new round of Victoria 3 Dev Diaries. Today we're going to be talking about companies, etc., mostly etc. 1.5 notably is going to have an open beta, and so it will be available early. As previously mentioned, one of the major focuses is to improve replayability. Currently, kind of what you do with economies is you just build the exact same way every single time, and so this is one of the reasons why replayability is relatively low in terms of the economic thing, because every country looks the same, especially if you are expanding in all the same places every single time. And so what they wanted to do is develop competitive advantages against other nations. That way you could be like, okay, this is my fishing run, this is my blah 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 run. But as far as the natural resources go, you know, you kind of blast and expand them all out anyways, and I don't think that this will necessarily change this, but this might change the ordering or the sequencing, and in particular add a certain level of richness to the mid-game, assuming that certain companies are just like obviously the best ones. Before I go into the nitty-gritty, you should mention this dev diary is mainly going to focus on companies, the feature that will form available in the first open beta release, with a narrow focus on achieving those design goals for economic specialization, flavor, and prestige. So all of this sounds fantastic, and they are going to be talking about the form that's going to be on the first beta release, not necessarily the form that comes in the 1.5 patch. However, companies is a feature we have near limitless potential for expanding and hooking onto into more parts of the game. And I think that this is important to emphasize. We got introduced to Agitators in 1.3. The Agitators mechanic introduces a whole bunch of characters and this sort of thing, and this actually has enormous potential for, like, if you start to include new offices, new positions that these Agitators and, like, more character-driven stuff can be included in. Like, you're creating a scaffolding for future expansion, and even if companies is a little bit bare bones on release, it does have more room for growth, so I'm kind of happy about this. So I'll wrap up the dev diary by mentioning some of the ideas we have for building on the future. Also, please note that this is very much feature under development, so expect a lot of placeholder work in progress art, names, numbers, and interfaces. They might, I hope that they tune stuff a little bit more aggressively and throw a little bit balance to the wind a little bit, but we'll see. Okay, but enough preamble, let's go into the details. Companies are national level entities, so you'll get a nationwide bonus that are established by a country, each country being able to support a certain number of companies based on factors such as technology and laws. And so it'll be interesting to see what factors are what, but they don't give us any hint of that in the entire dev diary here. The vast majority of countries will not start with the ability to support any companies, but will need to reach a certain level of society tech before their company becomes available. It'll be interesting to see if laissez-faire becomes even better late game, or rather, normally laissez-faire starts to fall off after 1.2 billion GDP and you want to switch Council Republic. It'll be interesting to see if you have to make this decision between, do I want to have more companies because laissez-faire allows it, or do I want to go Council Republic? And hopefully that becomes a little bit of a nuanced decision. It'll be neat if the balance is such that those are close. Each company is associated with a certain type of buildings. For example, a company specializing in metal mines might be associated with iron mines and lead mines, while a more agriculturally inclined company might instead be associated with plantations, etc. To establish a company, you need technology, resource potential to construct at least one of their buildings. Currently, you can do it without constructing any, and flavored companies, more on that below, have more specific requirements. So flavored companies, they're making country-specific companies, which is going to make it so that there is some localized or local flavor for various countries that extends beyond, just having. There are going to be advantages to playing certain countries if you can create a company specifically for them and this sort of thing. So we see here as Sweden. I don't know. Sweden unifying with Denmark. I don't know what this flag is. And so we will see what a close look at some examples of some of these. And we see that you can establish it and at a certain level of prosperity. I'm assuming this is based on the number of buildings you've built. You will get, a bonus. And the bonus seems very, very, very modest. 10% prestige, while nice, is like not anything absolutely crazy or you would warp your economy over. 10% convoys actually seems pretty strong. And we see the United Forestry Conglomerate, which just instantly makes me think of Russia because you're pretty good in Russia. Gives a ton of infrastructure. 20 flat infrastructure is actually pretty nice in a lot of states, especially on something like if you're in Brazil or Russia where you can really push a lot of wood early. But overall, this is not an insanely large bonus, right? And so none of these bonuses are giving throughput or output bonuses to their respective things. So we're not seeing a throughput or output bonus for the forestry conglomerate or anything like this. And so it's giving you a reward for having built a lot of these things. But I'm guessing what the with the way the balance looks right now, and of course this is very tentative and I don't have any numbers and this sort of thing, my guess is that you will just want to pick up the best bonuses, and this won't really change the way you're building stuff. You'll just try and move towards the very best bonuses. You see here, we have devout approval, so I'm assuming there will be approval for IGs in a lot of these, but you'll just want to try and pick up the best bonuses as best you can, and it maybe influences the order of sequencing in which you emphasize certain industries, but overall doesn't necessarily profoundly create a different feedback loop or a different construction loop than what is fundamental in the game. And if this is the case, this is unfortunate because they're not achieving their goal. The bonuses need to be, in my opinion, stronger. And I also don't know what this prosperity is activated at. Is it activated at a nominal level or a percentage level? Do I have to maintain a certain percentage of my economy in the wood chopping? If this is the case, then it does reward specialization. But okay, let's continue. They made it sound like you can establish more and more companies and harvest more and more bonuses as time goes on. So this is, my intuition is that it is based on an absolute number of prosperity, not a relative, proportion of the GDP type of prosperity. Okay. Once established, the company will have effects on all buildings. So this is... Once established, the company will have an effects on all buildings associated with the type in their parent country. This is something that I did not notice as much when I was reading through this dev diary as much, and it's not something that is displayed in this UI. So I stand corrected in some of these things. If it is affecting the buildings by increasing throughput and this stuff, okay, the effects are twofold. It increases the throughput of the buildings as well as the construction efficiency when constructing new levels of the associated types. I take everything I just said back. So this is new, and this is substantive. If this is what it's going to do, the degree by which the companies boost their associated buildings is partially based on the prestige ranking of their parent nation. Interesting. With the third ranked nation gaining a larger boost than the fourth rank, and so on. While somewhat abstracted, this is meant to represent the competitive benefits to the company. How did I not remember reading this? I read through this. Okay. This is your brain on 1800 calories. While somewhat abstracted, this is meant to represent the competitive benefits to the companies from the internal status of the home country. The purpose of this effect as a game mechanic is to give players the direct economic reason to care about their overall prestige ranking versus other nations. This will be nice if this becomes very profound and will lead to actual rewards for building out the Navy. Currently, you can kind of build out the Navy, but it's really not that great. Yeah, if we're getting a throughput bonus and we're also getting a construction bonus, then we are going to have now phases where you are going to build into a certain thing early, and it is also going to reward certain starts, right? Because, for example, Russia has a bunch of wood at the start, and so this means that you could, for example, go the United Forestry Conglomerate very early, whereas another country like, let's say Egypt, which has basically no chopping, it can't possibly take this same opener, and so it's going to change things up. Now, as the game progresses, it goes longer and longer, you tend to acquire all the same territories, because the best places to expand are all the same, but this is going to shake up at least the start. And it'll be interesting if, you know, every country has a kind of company that they should focus on early, and, you know, that this affects their thing because you are getting such a big benefit from the throughput. But okay, let's continue on. It is worth noting that in conjunction with this change, we've increased base construction cost of all buildings. This, to me, reads a little weird, but or it doesn't read weird in the sense that it's strange, but I'm uncertain of the effects. And through the change to local pricing, this is what I was talking about at the very start, somewhat lowered the base economic efficiency of most buildings. So this implies to me that local price will not work the way I was thinking it was going to work, where there would be a local price and a market price, and your industries would just use whichever is lower. This implies to me that it will use the local price, or the local price will affect things to a certain degree, and so this will make everything less efficient, because everything will be slightly more expensive if you can't get stuff sourced locally. But I'm guessing there's going to be a cap on this inefficiency. So, for example, let's say I am building tools in, I don't know where. It doesn't really matter. I'm building tools in a province, and I'm getting steel in another province. The price of steel in the province I'm building tools will rise above the market level in terms of the local level, and then I will have to pay extra for the steel, which will lead to an inefficiency. And had I built the tools where I had the steel, I would instead have a benefit from lower prices. And so I was thinking only efficiency would be created by the local goods price changes, and I didn't think any inefficiency would be changed, and it would always use the lower price. But this seems to imply that if local prices is higher, it will use the local price, but I can't imagine it would use the capped price. So, for example, in province A, if it has no steel production, I can't imagine that it's going to give me plus 75% cost on steel. Right? I don't think it's going to do this, because otherwise, you know, Great Britain's like economy would just instantly collapse, because it is dependent on so many goods from the East India Company to produce stuff in manufactories back home. Like, it doesn't make sense. But if we saw a plus 5% cost or plus 10% cost relative to market price as a result of local goods being expensive, this would create this inefficiency that they're talking about. And so this is, you know, it's not necessarily good or bad, but it's going to affect things in a particular way that I was not anticipating. Okay, the overall intent is that the baseline economy should be less efficient, with companies allowing countries to make up the difference in select areas, providing incentive for specialization and competitive advantage mentioned above. However, one exception is that the base construction production was increased from 5 to 10 to ensure the base slowdown in construction did not make small nations entirely unviable to play. This, by the way, in terms of practice, will make puppeting really small countries better, and they also mentioned that they are going to make the AI much less aggressive about joining against you, you know, to kind of help out insignificant powers or unrecognized powers. And so puppeting a bunch of small countries becomes a lot better, because previously you would benefit by puppeting a really small country because they would get 5 free construction. Now they're getting 10 free construction, and so puppeting small countries will get even better, because they will still be able to grow their economy at a decent clip with the 10 construction, and then you annex them eventually, and then they'll have like their one little province all built out. Okay, so we see company construction bonus 29%. We see base value and prestige from power ranking. I don't know how I didn't notice this the first time through, but this is giving us additional construction, and this is quite a big construction bonus. And so this is pretty interesting that we are going to maybe see that certain countries are going to be really strong. Like Russia just seems like so strong because logging is already like the best industry early on. And if you can get like one of these really early, but maybe they can't get it really early because they start traditionalism and serfdom and this type of thing. And so maybe they can't get the company that they want. It'll be interesting to see. Established companies also have productivity and prosperity ratings. Productivity is simply the average productivity of all of its associated buildings. This is compared against the global average productivity of all companies in the world, with companies that are doing better than average gaining prosperity over time. Interesting. This is against the global average, while companies doing better than average gaining prosperity over time. So you have to outperform the average, which is going to make trade centrally important, because if you want to increase the productivity of your buildings, increasing the price of the good is going to be really important, but you're shooting down the price of the good by specializing. Right? And so what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to export in order to keep the price high, because the productivity of the building, or wait, never mind. Productivity is different than profitability. Productivity is just how much you are making like per input, not how much you are making per input minus the costs. If I recall correctly. I forget which number is productivity and which one's the other one. Okay. But you're going to gain prosperity over time. It's still going to be the same, where you want to export a whole bunch of what you're specializing in, and companies below a certain threshold, which is lower than the threshold for gaining prosperity, losing it instead. If a company reaches 100 prosperity, so this is not flat, this is going to be relativistic. It's not going to be a flat, like I was talking about earlier, where we get it up to a certain level and then we just... we need to focus on the buildings, and this might even lead to you trying to intentionally drive consumption of particular goods just to increase the price. Like, so for example, building a ton of furniture manufacturers to increase the price of wood. So now the metagame might not be tools into clothes, it might be tools into furniture. To increase the price of wood being more important to raise this prosperity. But let's come back. If a company reaches 100 prosperity, well, so the thing is this bonus isn't that good. And this is kind of what I read before, but the construction bonus and the throughput bonus is tremendous. But okay, if a company reaches 100 prosperity, its prosperity modifier will activate, gaining a company-specific bonus to its parent nation. This is intended to add additional dimension to the selection of companies. Do you simply want to focus on whatever resource you are going to be the most profitable for your nation, or aim to build up a specific industry for bonuses it can give you? These bonuses seem super modest relative to the construction bonus, like 35% construction efficiency. While this will get diluted as you get into like the later game, this seems like 30% construction efficiency is a lot. So, yeah. As an example, a player that is planning to play against a particularly aggressive opponent may want to focus on building up an arms industry-related company for military advantages it can grant. This is interesting too, although we don't see any screenshots of this. Agricultural Development Society, blah blah blah, prosperity, and it will boost the rural folk. This is a little bit interesting. As we can see, it's just this one-time bonus. I don't know if you can get over 100 prosperity, or 100 is the cap, in which case it might be really hard to maintain bonuses. Again, pretty modest, but this bonus is okay, but you don't want to build out these industries, so I don't think you would ever take this company. As we hinted earlier without other economic changes. As we hinted earlier in the dev diary, companies come in two varieties, standard and flavored. Standard are available to everyone, unless replaced by a flavored company, where flavored companies tend to be restricted to certain cultures and or geographic regions. So this is neat. This means that there will be an advantage to playing certain countries, while currently, there's no advantage to playing any singular country, except for, some get unique interest groups that might be better or worse. Like, for example, it's harder to pass atheism as China because your intelligentsia interest group is unique and doesn't support it. So like this is one thing, and also Catholic is the best religion because there is a unique building that is activated by being Catholic, and there's no other religion that has a unique building. So currently there's like no local flavor. But if one company tends to be better because they have a better, like, let's say bonus or this type of thing, like if instead of rural folk approval, you got something else here, right? That was better. I don't know. Like, I have no idea. Like plus 5% rural folk. What is it, Clout or whatever. This might be better, and I don't think it is though. But maybe. It might incentivize playing as certain countries. And so, for example, a North German nation that owns parts of the Rhineland will have access to historical German countries available to them. But this will also add quite a bit of flavor and also being able to look at unique stuff. And maybe it will, if stuff activates at like 95 prosperity, maybe that'll be how they differentiate. Okay. Flavored companies are mostly historical, but not always, as sometimes we have to go in alt history with a set of building types based around their real-life historical business focuses and tend to have stronger or more interesting prosperity bonuses than the standard companies. Flavored companies, so we're seeing something better or more interesting than this. Flavored companies may sometimes replace very similar standard companies, but this is the exception rather than the rule. Most flavored companies do not replace the standard companies. All right. That's the gist of what companies will look like when you get your hands on it in the 1.5 open beta. Important to note, this does not necessarily mean live, but I just don't know how my brain skipped over the construction bonus when I was reading through this the first time. But the construction bonus seems quite large. I didn't see anything about how much throughput bonus you would get, but they did mention a throughput bonus. But this is going to make it so you want to specialize, and is probably, unless they're changing the efficiency numbers, is probably going to be wanting to specialize in wood, and countries that start out with enough wood that you can specialize are going to be better, like countries like Russia, except for they also said technology and laws will determine how many companies you have access to, and I'm guessing traditionalism of Russia will not allow them to have any companies. But we'll see how that shakes out. All right, that's the gist of what companies will look like when you get your hands on it first in the 1.5 open beta. As I mentioned at the beginning, though, there's a lot of places we can envision taking this in the future. So here's a few examples of that, though you shouldn't expect all of that in 1.5. Having companies level up beyond a single prosperity bonus, possibly in a way that ties to diplomacy rank and replaces current company bonuses from prestige. Having pops specific buildings in specific cases, interest groups, and or characters more directly associated with companies instead of having them be a national level entity. It would be so cool if they made it so that the agitator mechanic instead became like a personality mechanic, and there was like cabinet positions, and you could have certain people at the head of the company, and like all this type of stuff, and the game just gained a huge level of depth in that regard. Companies having political or geopolitical ambitions, for example, a fruit company might wish to create a fruit-focused republic, banana republic. This is interesting, and them kind of having this sort of thing, but again, this sounds like what they're not going to be including this in 1.5. Multinational companies that aren't limited to a single country, which does sound fascinating. I'll leave you all with a bonus screenshot of the first companies added to the game in the earliest iteration of the feature. Sadly, neither Bjorn Metal nor Martin's Fish Tank Emporium will be available in 1.5 version of the game. Absolutely tragic we won't have access to tanks and fish. And that's all for today. So, kind of to briefly summarize what we've seen is we are going to be getting companies. These companies will encourage specialization, largely through giving throughput and construction bonuses. I think this will be what's more important. There will be a limited number, and so I'm guessing what it will be like this will create more phasic structure to the game, where you want to establish a company and then absolutely blast what they're building, exporting it, making sure its buildings are very productive, and all this sort of stuff, chasing throughput, this sort of thing, in order to get the prosperity up to get the bonus. The bonuses don't seem absolutely tremendous. I think the bigger benefit is construction and throughput. Having such an enormous construction bonus is going to be really nice, especially because they talked about slowing down the economy in general. that you do not have a company slowing down. So they talked about increasing the construction cost of all buildings. They didn't talk about decreasing the efficiency of all buildings. So where is that they talked about increasing the construction of all buildings? They did talk about it. I just can't remember exactly where in the dev diary they talked about it. But increasing the cost of construction of all buildings will, affect things. And they also talked about local prices creating penalties, which is a bit news and invites more speculation on how things go. Notably, in this dev diary, they're talking about introducing companies, like another economic feature to the game. And there's no mention of, fixing problems with the military and diplomatic plays and diplomacy, which, I'm kind of beating the dead horse here. But these have been the features that I wanted to see most updated in the game, and has been the commentary I've made most consistently, is that I think the economic system is pretty strong right now. The most frustrating and immersion-breaking, aspects of the game come from, the military, diplomacy, and diplomatic plays, kind of all those three tied together. And so, while I am excited about these changes, and I also think that based on what they're saying, it will, so here's the thing. They talk about, improve replayability and challenge the core gameplay economic loop, and I mean, the unique companies that are unique to each country will change stuff quite a bit and maybe allow you to break this. But I'm guessing, based on how they've said it, the same companies are going to be probably best for everyone, and probably the forest one and the tools one are going to be the two best companies at the very start of the game. And then, maybe the wood, maybe it changes to being furniture instead of clothing. I haven't read anything in here that makes me think that the metagame of what industries you focus on first will change, but instead you'll just be implementing the companies that focus on these. And also, probably going laissez-faire is going to be much better, and this sort of thing. I was thinking free trade would, with local prices, free trade might get worse, but I'm guessing free trade makes companies better. And so we'll see how all that shakes out. But a little bit of an interesting shakeup here. Would have loved to see some stuff about military. Maybe they're kind of keeping it close to the chest until they know what they can get out without bugs, which seems fair enough. According to them, 1.5 was supposed to be a military update, so it's a little strange to see this, but it's an economics game. I'm delighted by economic stuff, so I'm excited to see all this, and excited to make Victoria 3 content. For those of you who haven't known, I've been having computer problems, and there's been no dev diary, so I couldn't really do anything Victoria 3 oriented, but I can do this, which is also why the resolution here is low, and, the camera's not that nice. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube algorithm stuff, and other than that, have a good one.